This is CNN Breaking News.
I'm Pamela Brown in Washington. Welcome to our viewers in the United States and around the world. You are in the CNN newsroom on this Saturday evening, and we're following breaking news tonight out of Colorado. A Boeing 777 with 241 passengers and crew on board started shedding debris after an engine failure, causing huge pieces of metal to rain down over Broomfield, Colorado, just outside of Denver. The United Airlines flight was headed to Honolulu from Denver International Airport and then turned around for an emergency landing this afternoon, shortly after taking off. The NTSB has formally launched an investigation into the incident, but it appears a huge tragedy was narrowly avoided. Pilots landed the plane safely with no injuries to anyone on board, and there are no known injuries on the ground from the falling debris, which local police say is amazing. Incredibly calm in the cockpit, even as a United Airlines pilot called air traffic control to report engine failure. We now have that audio of the very moment the pilot issued the Mayday call. Listen.
Mayday, Mayday, United 28, United 328 Heavy, Mayday, Mayday aircraft.
328 Heavy, say again, please, read all that again.
Yeah, United Denver departure, United 328 Heavy, Mayday aircraft just experienced engine failure, need a turn immediately.
I want to turn now to our Lucy Kavanaugh. She is at the scene. Lucy, what are you seeing?
Well, Pam, it's been a surreal experience being out here. You know, it's a Saturday afternoon. A lot of families were out and about. There's a dog park nearby, so folks were walking their dog. There's also a massive soccer field where a lot of kids were practicing soccer when this incident took place several hours ago. And we're actually standing on one of the streets that's closed off by police tape where some of the debris had fallen on a house. That image that you saw of the round piece of engine or whatever that was is actually right behind the RV there. But I want to bring in two guests, two young women who were actually practicing soccer on the field when this happened. This is Riley, who's 17 years old, and Bella, who's 16 years old. And Bella, you were actually on the field when this happened. Can you describe what you experienced?
Yeah, so we were about an hour into practice. We're going to go for like an hour and 30 today, I think. And we were doing a possession drill, working on our attacking and defending. And then we kind of just heard like a boom or like a pow, kind of like either a gunshot or like firecrackers or fireworks going off. And I actually thought it came from the neighborhood, so we just kind of kept practicing. But then these guys came over and said a plane exploded, and we looked up and you just kind of see these black debris things falling out of the sky. And it took us a second to really realize what was going on, and we kind of just stood there like, what are we supposed to do? And then we were out in the middle of the field, so we had to figure out whether where to go. Some girls ran to their cars, and then there are two pavilions that we could go under. I went to one that was up on the hillside, and so under there we just kind of watched the rest of the debris fall down. Some fell into the neighborhood and other pieces onto the field. And yeah.
What was going through your mind when you realized this was a plane? I mean, were you scared?
I was really nervous. I was more like, okay, I don't want to get impaled by anything, so I'm gonna run towards that thing that has a big metal roof over it. I drive a Jeep, and I had the soft top on, and I was like, that's probably not the smartest place to be, if anything. So I was just kind of focused on getting there and then see what happened afterwards.
And Riley, you had just finished your practice session, so what did you see?
So I was just about to leave, and I was in the car with my friend, and we just saw black stuff falling from the sky, and we were really confused. And then we saw people like starting to run out to the shelters with bags over their heads. And after like a few minutes of just seeing that stuff, I saw a few people pick up like one of the biggest pieces. I was like, I'm pretty sure that's a plane. So then I kind of figured it out. But.
Thank you so much. I mean, a terrifying experience, and actually picking up those pieces of plane is what the police say you should definitely not do. They are still investigating the area. In fact, Pam, they don't even know how large the debris field is. While we've been out here, people had actually come up to the police to report pieces of debris in their yard, in front of their house, and trying to figure out who to report that to. The NTSB is going to be taking over this investigation, but right now this is a very active scene. A lot of folks just dazed and confused, and thankfully, for the most part, it seems unhurt. Pam?
Thankfully, I just can't imagine what it's like for them, trying to enjoy their Saturday out and about, and then suddenly pieces of a plane fall in their front yard. Incredible to hear what some of those eyewitnesses said. You interviewed Lucy. Thanks so much. And CNN aviation correspondent Pete Muntean joins me now. First of all, Pete, what strikes me is that how much debris fell from the ground. Fell from the plane to the ground. Why is it that happened? I mean, it's one thing for an engine to fail and to no longer work. It's another for parts of it to just come off, as you see right here in this video, and land on the ground.
In aviation, I'm a pilot and a flight instructor. We use the term losing an engine when the engine stops producing power. In this instance, the flight crew literally lost the engine with this debris field a mile long over Broomfield, Colorado. That is something that is very rare. Just the uniqueness and how extreme this was really can't be understated. Engines fail on commercial airliners from time to time. On the grand scheme of successful flights, that's actually pretty rare. But for this to happen in such an extreme way is especially rare. You can see in that image there, in front of that house, between that RV and the house, that looks to me to be the front of the right engine of this Pratt & Whitney engine on this Boeing 777 jet. And it really speaks to the force of that boom those witnesses described. These are parts of airplanes that are incredibly well engineered, because not only are parts moving around inside at an incredibly fast speed, it also is so critical to getting the airplane in the air. You can't do it without an engine, but it's also very hot. And so these are pieces of aluminum and Kevlar and composite that truly shook off of the airplane and into this massive debris field. It's really quite something and can't be understated how rare this is.
Just remarkable visuals here that we're seeing as you're speaking there, Pete Muntean. Stay with us. I want to bring in CNN aviation analyst Miles O'Brien and CNN aviation analyst and former NTSB managing director Peter Goals. Thank you both for coming on. Miles, just put this in perspective for us, if you would. How close were we to witnessing a horrific tragedy today? Or was this scenario the result of the training and engineering that's in place specifically to prevent a catastrophe?
Yeah, I like to think about the latter part of it. There is this expression in aviation, the rules are written in blood. Aviation progressively and systematically over the years has taken mishaps, events, fatalities, crashes, and turned them into better ways to fly. And a lot of what we're seeing in the wake of this is a system that did okay. Dramatic as it was, we can't expect jet engines doing what they do at the very edge of our technological capabilities to perform flawlessly all the time, especially when you consider the number of flights that we deal with every day, even in the pandemic world. Statistically, they're going to fail. And so the system was built to protect against something really catastrophic happening here. That engine is designed to contain the shrapnel that occurs when there is an uncontained failure as best it can. And it appears that's what happened here. It didn't pierce the fuselage. Imagine if that had happened. If it had pierced the fuel tank and you saw the open flames on the engine there, that could have been catastrophic. And then the separate issue of, imagine if there were kids playing on that soccer field. So several bullets were dodged here, but in many respects, it's in a calculated way. We could say it's lucky, but it's also a system that rolls up their sleeves and tries to imagine these scenarios and tries to build in layers of redundancy and defense in depth against it.
And the pilot's just so well trained, training for this from the moment they start, is what I'm told from other pilots. Pete Muntean said that as well. So clearly the pilot was so calm in the Mayday call. Really remarkable to hear about that. And we're hearing from the residents on the ground, too, as that debris was falling down, Peter, where the police are saying, look, don't touch the plane debris. This is now part of an investigation. And the last hour, the department spokeswoman told me that there was about a 1 mile spread of debris there. So what can NTSB investigators learn from the spread and the positioning of these pieces?
Well, there's an old saying that the first piece off the aircraft indicates where the accident occurred. So they're going to be looking at the beginning of the debris field to see what pieces came off this engine first and what they look like. As Miles said, things worked as they were designed. Nothing penetrated the cabin of the aircraft. The pilots were trained to land it. So now the three most important pieces of evidence are going to be the voice recorder, the data recorder, and the evidence first off the aircraft. So people really shouldn't be touching this stuff. They want to find where that first piece is.
But to be clear, I mean, you're looking at all this debris and everything. Do you think that they're going to be able to figure out to get to the bottom of what happened here?
Absolutely. The NTSB, you know, we have found cabin doors at 10,000 feet. We have found pieces of fan blades in you know, farming fields, miles from accidents. The NTSB will find the wreckage. They will analyze it, and this one they'll figure out what happened.
So, from a pilot's perspective, Miles, try to put us in the shoes of the pilot on this plane. What was happening? I'm sorry, actually, Pete, I'm going to go to you because I want to get your perspective on this. And then, Miles, I'll go to you because you're a pilot, Pete. What's going on in the mind of that pilot? What was going on when the engine failed? This is something you told me before pilots trained for. He was very calm. But how hard is it to land a plane with one engine?
It's incredibly hard. It's tricky. You know, not only have you lost half of the available power here to keep the airplane climbing, but it essentially becomes very hard to maneuver. The dead engine now has essentially turned into a boat anchor, making the airplane hard to turn back to the field, hard to align properly with the runway. So the physics become very dynamic, and it becomes very difficult to fly running through the scenario, running through the emergency and the problem. That's also especially difficult, especially because of the extreme startle factor that would have been associated with this crash, a loud boom. So you have to sort of figure out first what that is. And then pilots who drill for emergency engine failures all the time have to start jumping into action and relying on their rote memorization and essentially become emotionless and really tuned into the airplane to make sure they do everything exactly right to get the airplane on the ground right away.
It's all the prep they did leading up to that moment that helps them in that situation. Very quickly, Miles, what does it tell you that one engine failed and the other didn't?
Oh, you know, imagine if we'd had a double failure. That would be that would take us back to like a Sully incident where you had the geese flying into the engines. Having two engines fail is such an extremely unusual scenario. Maybe a situation involving fuel contamination might be the case, but the fact is they're extremely reliable, and the possibility, I don't even want to try to rate the odds on having yet another engine fail subsequent to what you saw here today. That would you'd be better off playing the lottery and using that as your retirement fund.
All right, Miles O'Brien, Peter Goles, Pete Muntean, thank you so much, gentlemen.